What's up? What's happening? It's Boston has entered the chat. George Balekji here. Just solo right off the rip, but we got a packed episode for your guys. Yogi Roth, host of the Y Option podcast. Also catch him on the Big Ten Network, an Elite 11 quarterback coach. He stops by to talk the upcoming draft, all Big Ten, all Pac-12 prospects, which are a lot of guys the Patriots are targeting. Also, Athan and Matt, as always, ringside review after a letdown of a WrestleMania. We'll get right to that. We got all that right here in this episode of the chat. For now, check it out. Here's my guy, Yogi Roth, stopping by the show, talking Abdul Carter, Shador Sanders, Arante Ursery, and more. He's Yogi Roth, the host of the Y Option podcast. You could also catch him on the Big Ten Network as well, and coaches with the Elite 11. Yogi, thanks for hopping on the chat, my man. How we doing?
I'm fired up, man. Draft week. It's still spring ball week out here, so I got the Oregon Ducks this weekend. So, yeah, I'm fired up. Solo with my boys. My wife's out of town, so it's like everything all at once. So let's go, baby. Let's go.
Perfect timing to leave. Spring ball's firing up. The draft is honing in, so you could just put all your attention on ball. I love it. And I like you point out Oregon. I mean, you had the overlap with the old Pac-12, RIP, unfortunately, but also covering the Big Ten now and the new look Big Ten. I want to start with the biggest prospect coming out of the Big Ten, and Abdul Carter. We all know what he does. He's such a special talent. His athleticism, his bend, what he can be to just wreak havoc on the edge. What do you see in Carter that makes him worth that top 3 billing and makes him such a special player at the next level?
Well, I think, and I know you guys have talked about the draft ad nauseum. Congrats, you guys have crushed all your content with all of your guests. I've been enjoying consuming it over the last couple of weeks. With that said, I think everybody I've talked to in the NFL has been on the same note regarding the overarching theme of the draft, which is it's not loaded with Hall of Famers or it's not loaded with perennial Pro Bowlers. So I think it's important to couch that because even if we look at the presumed number 1 pick in Cam Ward, who I love. I've known Cam since he was a pup, and now he's going to be the guy, right? We all, I think, would agree on that. A year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, is he the number 1 pick? And I say the same thing for Abdul Carter. Like, he's got a unique edge to him. Is he the second best player in the draft, third best player in the draft? Yes, this year. What would he have been a couple years ago? I don't know, but I do know this from being at Penn State, visiting with James Franklin, being on that campus, watching him work, watching him practice, watching him prepare, of course, watching him play, to your point. There is no one better coming off the edge this year in the draft. There is no one more violent. There is no one that can give you a pseudo comp to the Micah Parsons, which I think is a little bit of a stretch, but there's a version there, right? Linebacker to edge rusher. And I do think that I think it's important to note that he's just getting going. He only played 1 season on the edge, and he's the best edge rusher in America. So imagine another year. Imagine the tutelage that will come in the NFL. Who knows who will be going up against the tackle positions, the little things that they'll teach him. So knowing enough about him to be dangerous, I think that he's got all the tools to be a dynamic player, an impactful player, a day one type of player. I'd love to see what happens if he and Kayvon Thibodeau were paired together. That'd be pretty fun, right? Old Pac-12 to the Big Ten on the East Coast. That could be a pretty fun one to imagine. But I think he's got a really high ceiling. I don't think it's a finished product, and I think that's okay because he's only played 1 year at that position.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing. You saw his ascension, off-ball linebacker, go out, make plays. It was the Micah Parsons type route to what he became at Penn State, too. That's how James Franklin got him and onto the campus in State College. And I like that you say that, him with Kayvon Thibodeau, because that's where I see it being. We know the chalk, it's going to be top 3. Cam Ward, who you love. Then we'll see Travis Hunter. And then Abdul Carter just makes a ton of sense at 3 over a QB because they would just have such a dominant defensive line. And maybe they get QBs later. And we'll talk about those guys in a second. Sticking with Penn State, though, Tyler Warren's that next big name. And that's a guy that's seen as a top 10 overall prospect. But it's interesting because as you related to other drafts, like where would he go in other drafts? What would you see with Tyler Warren, who has been seen to go 7 overall to the Jets? If Patriots trade back, it makes sense, get an elite weapon. But also, is he worth that of a top 10, top 15 pick?
Yeah, I think it's a fun conversation. I was filling in last week on Good Morning Football, and we had this conversation, like who's the best receiver not named Travis Hunter coming into the draft? And I love Tetro McMillan. I know you guys have talked about him recently on your show. I think Tyler Warren, among all the players, like I really believe this. If you looked at the top 10 players, skill position players on offense, who could you say in 5 years, in 7 years, will have the most Pro Bowl appearances? I just net out, and I think it's Tyler Warren. I really do. If you look at the way football is going, right? ton of 2 tight end personnel groupings, the challenges that poses to a defense, his versatility. I mean, you've heard it with all your guests, like the tape don't lie. Like it doesn't. He's played true tight end, hand in the dirt. He's played a flex tight end. He's played in the backfield. He's played wildcat. He's played freaking center. He snapped it to Drew Aller, caught a touchdown against USC. I mean, he is a guy that was circled every single time out on Saturday, and very rarely was he slowed down, and he was never stopped. And he's done that throughout his career. I called some people I know at Penn State last week, and I said, tell me about who he is. What does he bring to a locker room? What's his character like? What's his temperament like? And they just raved about him. In this, me first society that we're often in, especially in the NIL era, he's the absolute opposite of that. Never stuck his hand out, never wanted a freebie, just wanted to go to work. So I just go to him, and I'd love to see the Raiders. I think they'll pick it back. I know the rumors and everything that came out of their press conference would be Ashton Jeanty, who again is an absolute star. But if it's me, I'm taking Tyler Warren, man, because I think he's the surest thing. I think he's the surest thing of any offensive skill player in this draft.
Yeah, and when you look at him, I think everyone goes with the Gronk comp, and I don't like comparing anyone to a Hall of Famer, the greatest at the position. But if he's taken top 10 and you get Tucker Kraft, but he's more ahead on schedule with his development, like a guy that could step in 70 catches, 800 yards, 8 touchdowns, and get better from that point. And to what you point out with Penn State, he wants to get better. He buys into blocking. He wants to get better there. He loves playing football. I think that's so valuable, what you get with a guy with a Tyler Warren. What about on the Michigan end, Colston Loveland? I mean, I think that's a guy that's more profiles like a wide receiver, really good pass catcher, 6'6", 250, just slightly slimmer than Tyler Warren, carries a weight different. What do you think of that tight end? More of a pass catcher, I would say, out of Michigan.
Yeah, different body type, different movements. The way you nailed it, the way he gets in and out of cuts, the way he runs his routes. I think that Tyler Warren is that guy that he just continues to find holes in zones. Oh, he finds ways to separate. When you look at him and you watch both of them on tape, and maybe it's the number, who knows what it is, but you look at Colston and think, oh, he's a little bit more explosive. But when you watch him, it's not really the case. Both, I think, dynamic players. Both will be starters in the NFL. Both will impact the team. Colston's going to be a steal for somebody because he's not going to be picked in the top 10, top 15, in my opinion. So wherever he ends up going, I think people are going to love him. He's a guy that at Michigan, you know the deal. You got to be able to put your hand in the dirt. You have to be able to be physical. You have to be able to navigate bright lights. They did a year ago, and challenging adversity moments. He did it this past season with the team obviously struggling, especially at the quarterback position. Never pointed fingers. I think he's a pretty impressive teammate when you talk to the guys around him. So yeah, another talent at tight end. And I go back to Dalton Kincaid. To me, he was one of the best tight ends I've ever evaluated, probably in the last 7 years, I'd say. He's got a ceiling that, to your point, I don't want to say he's going to be Gronk, but he's got a ceiling that he'll be, I think, at perennial Pro Bowls. I think that both of these guys have the capability to be doing both of those things. As we know, it's going to be, how do you operate in the facility? That's what I'm curious. I don't know Colston well enough to know the pedigree of his work ethic, of who he is. Everybody in Michigan raves about him, so I have no reason to dispute that. So I hope he goes and thrives, but I think both of those tight ends, I think it's a pretty good tight end group overall. And again, I think that just speaks to the position. It just continues to be one at every level that people want, whether it's high school, give me another tight end, college. I'm doing spring games all the time now. They want multiple tight end sets. Same thing in the NFL. I think you'll see guys like G. Scott. There'll be later draft picks out of Ohio State, but there'll be players that will be on all core 4 special teams. They'll have a role, whether it's the true tight end, the H-back Colston, and obviously Tyler can fit both of those bills.
Yeah, and if he falls to 22, no one knows his pedigree better than Jim Harbaugh. And Justin Herbert's going to be banging on the table. Go get me that guy. All right, let's talk a little offensive tackle. And I think someone that hasn't been spoken about enough, and it's one of your guys, an Oregon Duck, Josh Conerly. What do you hear about him whenever you're up there on campus talking to the coaching staff? Because that's someone that it will be a back end of the first round pick. But say if a Kyle Shanahan maybe wants to trade back into the first round, maybe if Sean McVay wants to get younger on his offensive line, that's someone that's athletic, really smart, and fits into that outside zone scheme.
Yeah, it's fun when you go back to your notes from calling games. So I've been calling Oregon games for 20 years now, obviously this past season of the Big Ten. And I went back and looked at all the notes that I got, whether it was Kenny Dillingham, who coached him as a freshman, and he was kind of playing that jumbo extra tight end. You go to the BYU game his freshman year, he's in an entire drive, and he's playing that extra offensive lineman, or Will Stein the last 2 seasons. And what Will Stein shared with me, the offensive coordinator quarterbacks coach for the Oregon Ducks, was he knows the system like a quarterback. And I remember calling him in a production meeting. I said, hold on. Did I read this right? Did you really say that? He goes, yeah. He knows pass pro. He knows where the ball needs to go. Like, he's that type of student of the craft. I've never heard that about an offensive lineman. I mean, I coached Tyron Smith when he was at USC way back in the day. We've obviously covered a bunch of guys that have come out into the NFL. I've never heard a coach say he knows the game like a quarterback, knows the intricacies of the offense. I just think it speaks to his functional football intelligence. So, yeah, whether it's Kyle Shanahan, beautiful fit, right? You think of the West Coast offense, all the intricate things that they do there. There's a world where we're going to see tackle eligible within the Niners. If he ends up going there, we'll find Josh Conerly finding his way to get the ball in his hands, man.
And I can't imagine anything better, especially for a guy like you that works with the Elite 11. You have a right-handed quarterback. That's your left tackle. Is that second quarterback on the field? Yeah, I can't imagine how much that plays into the strength. What about Arante Ursery? That's the guy that out of Minnesota, playing left tackle, seen more of a top 35 pick, could slip to the second round. I think he'd be a tremendous fit with the Patriots, a value pick if they don't go left tackle in the first round. Maybe they go edge, maybe they go receiver, best available. What are you hearing about Ursery, and what did you pick up from watching him this season when it came to Gophers games?
Yeah, called a couple of their games this year against USC and UCLA, which was pretty fun because two different styles of defense to a certain degree, but also philosophically similar. With you look at Akaika Malloy, the defensive coordinator for UCLA, and Dan Lynn, of course, former NFL coach now with USC. The difference in those games was that if you look at UCLA, and you'll see it in the draft, they just had a little bit more speed, a little bit more power coming off the edge, right? Femi Oladejo, I think, will be another steal in the draft. You watch them going up against Ursery, let alone the other edge rushers in the Big Ten, and his athleticism, his bend. I think even when you talk to PJ Fleck about him, just the buy-in. Like, I think there is something in this era. I alluded to it a little earlier. When you're a premier position, quarterback, left tackle, elite wideout, what have you, corner, especially if the season isn't leaning towards the college football playoff, you can start looking at yourself and be like, all right, how am I going to grow my draft profile? How am I going to continue to evolve there? And when you talk to him, PJ Fleck or Greg Harbaugh, the offensive coordinator, they just talked about the selflessness of him. And then you watch the skill set. And it's impressive, man. As I referenced, his bend, his punch, his power, how he can move when they're trying to pull guys. I mean, there's a really intricate offense for Minnesota. To me, one of the most intricate offenses in the entirety of the Big Ten, just in terms of the pro-style stuff they're doing at the line of scrimmage. Under center, deep play action. You have to be able to set deep in the pocket if you're Max Brosmer, the quarterback, which means you got to be able to protect and set an edge if you're Ursery. And I think he did that. So you're right. I think it's a steal there. And I think it goes back to the thing we talked off the top, man. Like, the theme of this draft, it is not perennial elite players like we're accustomed to seeing, but offensive and defensive linemen, tight ends. Like, there's some longevity there among those positions. Those two tackles you just referenced, I think, are examples of it.
Yeah, and it's part of that with, maybe there's a drop-off after 3, but you could still get good players. You could get Pro Bowl level players. For the Patriots, what they need is starters. And you hint at a little bit at defensive linemen. I think Derek Harmon is a guy that's really going underneath the radar out of Oregon. Fantastic creating pressure in the middle of the line of scrimmage from that defensive tackle spot, playing the 3-tech. I don't think it makes sense for the Pats, but as a guy that we can see go and make an impact on the game, what jumps out to you about a Derek Harmon out of Oregon?
Well, number one, like how quickly you picked up Tosh Lupoi's system, and there's a lot to do there. I think two is how sudden he played. If you go back and you watch like the in zone copies of games, and when offensive linemen who obviously know the snap count are trying to get off a hair quicker, he's still beating him with a punch. He's still able to cross face. He's still able to loop and twist and find his way into the backfield. He's also, most importantly, able to see whether it's outside zone, inside zone with his hands, push, peek, shed, go make a play. So I'm with you, man. And then I go to his attitude. I mean, he brought an edge to Oregon. Oregon already had one with Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi leading that team with a defensive mentality. He only added to that. And they needed that. It's a huge reason why they went undefeated in the regular season and won the Big Ten title.
When you look at that offensive line trenches, who's that guy that you watch and you go, whoever gets him, whatever range it could be in this draft, out of the Big Ten, out of the Pac-12, anyone you're watching when you're going across a college tape, you're like, that guy is going to be someone I would love to have on my team?
Well, I'll say this is going to be a sleeper. Jonah Savanaya. He came out of the University of Arizona. I don't know if you saw it yesterday. There's a beautiful documentary on Fox about Polynesian football players. He was a part of that. Our good buddy, Scotty McKnight, he directed it, who I love, former Buff wide receiver. Anyway, Big Jonah, I can remember him coming out of high school. And the current offensive line coach for the Raiders, Brendan Carroll, was on recruiting him. And he sent me this video of him just kind of like running on those fields and just doing some agility bags. And I was like, who is that guy? Massive human, but fleet of foot. Like, looked like a point guard just jumping over the bags. And he wasn't anywhere near in the shape that he is now. You look at his freshman year, he starts there. He could play both guard and tackle. And most importantly, not only can he be a game wrecker on the offensive line because he can move so well, he can pull, he can block down, he can pass set. But when you look at the intangibles, I think he's going to bring to a team. I mean it, man. I think we're looking at a starter for a long time in the NFL. He came out. He was a huge sleeper. I think he's a freshman All-American. Plays well his second season. Gets a new coach last year. They had a couple different offensive coordinators. They struggled at times at Arizona. He didn't flinch. He could have easily been, and nobody would have blamed any of him because he and a couple other players, including Tetro McMillan, were high-profile guys that didn't jump into the transfer portal. He said, no, I want to finish kind of what we started here. Not a shocker if you know Big Jonah. And he did. And I think wherever he lands, man, I think he's going to be a steal. I really believe he's going to be a starter on somebody's offensive line, can play across it, which is going to add tremendous value wherever he goes. He'll probably be a day 3 guy, but don't be shocked if somebody late on day 2 jumps up and gets him. I would go get him right now.
Yeah, you'd get 6'6", 325 offensive lineman.
Man.
He had a 172 10-yard split. Like, he could get out there as a pulling guard and just ruins people's days. No, I love that. Now I'm gonna tap into the college wide receiver, but also the college quarterback coaching you, Emeka Egbuka. Who do you compare him to at the NFL level? I think he does everything fantastic. You get such a high floor guy with him, so productive. When you watch him, you go, okay, he's the next blank.
One of my favorite guys of all time is Michael Wilson. I got to be honest. He interned for me back when he was at Stanford. So we would do quarterback evals at the Elite 11. He'd come down to LA. We'd grind on tape because he wanted to be a broadcaster, wanted to get in the front office or GM, and he'll be able to do whatever he wants when his illustrious career is over. Currently, he's with the Arizona Cardinals. But when I watch Emeka, and I've known Emeka since he was in high school, coming out of Seattle. You thought he was going to stay on the West Coast, and he said, no, I want to go to Columbus. I want to be developed by Brian Hartline. I don't want to come and play as a freshman, and I don't need 70 catches my first year. Let me really excel at my craft. He is leaving The Ohio State University as the all-time leader in receptions. That place has pumped out elite receivers forever. Go back to Chris Carter and just go on the internet and just look up Ohio State receivers, and away you'll see this amazing list. Mecca's at the top. Why do I compliment Michael Wilson? One, I think he can be a true flanker, right? He can be off the ball. You can put him in motion. He can handle press coverage. He can play in the slot. He played in the slot primarily this past season for Chip Kelly and this offense at Ohio State on their way to the national championship. But when you go around this team, I was there with them their entire playoff run. So I interviewed Emeka pretty much at every turn. But then I was just there about 2 weeks ago for their spring game, their spring showcase. And I'm talking to players. I'm talking to coaches. I'm talking to the next group of receivers. What is the room like now with Emeka not being there? And they all echoed a version of the same sentiment, which was he elevated the standard of not just how to play on the field, how to practice, but how to talk to guys, how to breathe life into somebody, how to pick somebody up, how to be hard on someone. All of those things, to me, scream, I'm already a pro. Michael Wilson was the same exact way at Stanford. He was a little bit banged up coming out. Emeka, thankfully, is not. That's why I think he'll get drafted higher than Michael Wilson did. But he's that type of player. Similar player that I coached, Steve Smith. The Steve Smith from USC that won a Super Bowl with the Giants.
Yeah.
Similar type of guy. And look, it's all happening now because we know what draft week is like. All the stories are how much everybody loves Emeka. What a pro he is. Of course, not a shocker. It takes all about 35 seconds to figure that out if you're ever around him. And it's all legit. It's all real. He'll walk in and be a day 1 starter. I hope somebody jumps up early and gets him because I think he's that talented. I think those intangibles of being a pro now in this landscape. He doesn't have the skills that T-Mac has, Tetro McMillan, in terms of the acrobatic catches, the dynamic athlete that we all know Tetro McMillan to be. But after that, he's Tyler Warren and him are like the surest things. Honestly, when I look at the skill positions, if you're like, bet on it, I am betting on those two guys.
That's a guy, too. When everyone says that about him, he elevated the room. Okay, he shared that room with Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jeremiah Smith. All of those guys, top 5, top 10 picks. Jeremiah Smith might be 1-1 when he's ready to come out, but that says so much about him. And he doesn't get lost in the shuffle. You mentioned his production, but he doesn't get stuck behind those guys. I think that's what impresses me about Egbuka, the buy-in, the leadership, but also he's so good that he can still hold his own, sharing a wide receiving room with those studs.
Look, you love football like I love football. And to my right here, I got this other screen where I do all my breakdowns. And I've got a whole cut up of downfield blocking from Emeka Egbuka.
Oh, he
So
loves
you're
it.
right. He decides to come on back, right? This is natty or bust for this entire group of guys, 15 guys that have gone to the combine. They're all going to get drafted. And it could have become I need to get mine from him and a bunch of other guys. And then here came, to your point, Jeremiah Smith, best freshman receiver I've seen since Larry Fitzgerald, who was my roommate in college, right? He's just an absolute monster. No jealousy, no animosity. No. All about just being steady, being mature, being a pro. And even when that team struggled, right, they did not play elite football all season until the playoff run. He was the steadying voice. He was the steady hand, man. So I'm all in on everything about him. I'm biased towards the Raider just because Pete Carroll was like my biggest mentor. I know that the Patriot fans know him well from way back in the day. I hope the Raiders get like Genty, Tyler Warren, Emeka. Like I hope they get them all. Just great dudes. Go to Vegas and get with Pete and Chip and company.
Hey, I mean, I think Pete would hate to see it, but he could end up in Seattle like Buka. Then you have him with JSN, learning from Cooper Kupp, but also that threat he leaves where he can line up inside, but he can line up out wide in a way that reminds me of a Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper, the versatility, undersized for being an outside receiver, but plays above that size. And you mentioned the run blocking. It's not that he loves it. He wants to do it. He wants to ruin guys' days with his run blocking and then kick their butt over the top by scoring a big touchdown on them too. This is becoming an Ohio State wide receiver segment, but it's just he's that good. And to your point, like his floor is so high, he's a sure thing.
He is, man. I was just with Brandon Cooks about 2 months ago. Went to an Oregon State event out here on the West Coast, and I'm just reminded. I remember him as a freshman, and then you look at what's the year 13 or something like that in the NFL upcoming here, and he did all of those little things right. Different. He had different speed than Emeka, I think, just different breakaway type of speed in that regard to their game. But when you look at the things that matter most, the things that withstand, the test of time in the NFL at that position, it's, do you have elite hands, right? Are you truly trying to master your craft? Are you willing to do the selfless elements? And what type of teammate are you? And I just think I love that comp of Cooks the person, Wilson and Steve Smith the potential player, and then here's Emeka. If Seattle gets him, John Schneider, I know him well enough from his time just being up there around Pete a bunch, they'll love him. They will just fall in love with him. And how about that story, him going back home? I hope that happens. I hope that happens in this draft because I think, we all get into the nitpicky of like what a guy doesn't have. Arms not long enough, velocity not great enough. But like this is an amazing week, right? Dreams get to be actualized. So for Emeka Egbuka, can you imagine him going back to Seattle? He and Cooper Kupp. I mean, they'd have a parade before game one for those two guys being back near their hometowns.
And you bring in a quarterback like Sam Darnold on that type of deal. That's what he would love. Go. What a deep receiving room of all pros. All right, little running back talk here. Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. I think that's a guy that early round 2 will get his name called. Home run hitter. And I think what Ohio State did great is they dialed back his touches and his production went through the roof. And I think that's a modern day NFL. It's Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, right? I think Chicago makes sense. New England makes a ton of sense. Ramondre Stevenson, early down back. Travion Henderson hit the home run. What do you see with him out of Ohio State?
Well, I believe that's the deepest running back group I've ever evaluated in advance of a draft. So called last 15 years. Find a deeper group. You look at the last 5 years and you look at the running backs drafted, and it's hard to not look at this year's group and say, you know what, I can see them exceeding those expectations over the last 5 years. So I'm talking about, you look at the top, clearly Ashton Genty, and let's just say Cam Scadaboo is 5. And then you've got Travion, you've got Omarion Hampton, you've got Quinshon Judkins. I mean, I think all of those guys have a similar ability, all tweak a little different, right? So Travion, best pass protector of the group. Cam Scadaboo can probably do the most among the group. I think Quinshon Judkins is the most undervalued of the group. And I go back to like, I'll date myself here, but go back to Alex Gibbs. And for those watching and listening, Google Alex Gibbs. He is the inventor of the zone running scheme. He was with Mike Shanahan and the Patriots forever. What did they do? Right, Terrell Davis. Think of the running backs that were there with 6th, 7th round picks, free agents. They all did the same thing. Look at the Niners when Christian McCaffrey went down. It's like they stopped running the ball. I think there's something to, if you're running that type of scheme offensively, that if you can get a guy who's really dynamic in the zone scheme, like you don't have to reach necessarily. Like I think it's deep enough. So I think the Patriots, will find their way to get it back. Any of them, I think, would thrive within this system. And I believe that among this group, and especially the amount of outside zone run game that we see. RPOs are becoming a thing that is obviously the normalcy now in the NFL. These guys operated in that. You look at the backs at Ohio State, if you just want to talk about Henderson, he started the season, really run a lot of downhill runs with Chip Kelly out of the pistol. As they had offensive line injuries throughout, you started seeing guys pull, trap, just different types of run schemes. So he's so versatile, elite catching the ball out of the backfield. Look at the Tennessee game if you want to see a little screen, or the Texas game before the half. So he can do a little bit of everything. And I think this group, all 5 of those guys, I think, can thrive. And I'm sure there's a couple more that I'm forgetting that will find their way onto a roster, all special teamers as well. So, yeah, man, I think the Patriots would be lucky to get Travion, but really any of that group.
Yeah, even to sit back, wait for a guy like a Jordan James out of Oregon, just a good football player. Devin Neal out of Kansas, DJ Giddens out of K-State. All right, Yogi, I want to end with this one, and I had to ask, you mentioned it, the guy that was your roommate in college, ended up being one of the greatest receivers of all time. If Larry Fitzgerald was in this draft, where's he going?
1.
Yeah.
I'm not even flinching, man.
Why 1?
Well, Jeremiah Smith was in this draft. Where would he go?
1-1.
You know what I mean? Like, I just think you look at how unique Larry was. I went back and just was watching old tape because I was with Will Blackman on the set, who Will from his time in the NFL. He's born up in that region. And I remember Will and Larry going back, BC Pitt, back in the Big East back in the day. He just had this uncanny ability to sight the ball. And I think that's the thing that doesn't really get talked about with wideouts anymore. And I think it's because a lot of wideouts aren't playing baseball. Like, if you ask that question to guys at the combine or guys in your show, I would bet it'd be less than 2%. And why do I say baseball is so important? Larry was literally the ball boy, bat boy for the Twins, right? His dad was the writer. So he was shagging flies with Kirby Puckett. When the ball comes off the bat, you got to sight it. You got to sight it. And I think that's a lost art at wide receiver. Ball comes off the hand. Can you sight it and then keep moving and manipulate the DB? Not a lot of guys, I think, have that uncanny ability unless you're playing a bunch of sports. That's why T-Mac is so dynamic. But that was Fitz back in the day, and he would just toy with guys and smiling the entire time while doing it. Then you add in the professionalization of just who he was. I remember my first day with him, first game, I was kind of the big brother. We played, I don't know, call it Kent State. It was a MAC school. Game 1. On the way in, you're on the bus and you had to wear a suit and tie. That was the rule for Walt Harris, our head coach at the time. But on the way out, you could just put on your sweats and your warm-ups, whatever. And the game ends and Larry puts on his suit and tie. And I went up to him and I said, hey, you don't have to wear that anymore. And he goes, oh, I know, but I'm going to. People are going to know what I'm about from day one. And I think that just speaks to a reflection of who he is and what his career has been. He's been a pro from the moment I met him. He's been a pro as an elite athlete. He's been a pro as a friend. He's a guy I still stay in touch with. He's a pro as a dad. His son is now a huge recruit in college football as a wide receiver, his oldest son. So overall, number 1 pick. It's not close. I'd beg that he would fall, again, just because of my Raider bias and Pete. But no, he'd be the guy, and I don't think many GMs would disagree.
He's even the guy that would be worth trading up for. If the Pats are at 4, you trade up to get that elite talent. Because if he's a Larry Fitzgerald, to the point, I like you bring up Jeremiah Smith. He's 6'2", he's a little lighter, same height. But that's where I try to make the comparison. I hate the Hall of Fame comparison. Elite body control, plays above the rim. And like you said with Larry Fitzgerald, you could have him double teamed and covered. If you can't leap with him, you're not beating him. He's beating you.
Yeah. You know what would be interesting, man, is that if they did have that right now, I think it was Roy Williams from Texas and maybe Reggie Williams from Washington were that same draft class, if I'm not mistaken. And I apologize if I am, but I'm pretty sure that they were the same.
You're right.
To that point, it would be a Larry Fitzgerald debate, Larry, and then the explosive ability of T-Mac. We'd be having that. Because it's not like Larry ran a 4.4. Who knows if he even would have ran back, in this era to even showcase. Maybe you just say my film kind of doesn't lie. But I think it'd be interesting to hear the debates. Because even with Shedeur, I know we're running over here, but I think there's half of the league that is no, I want old school. I want a guy that's going to be in the facility at 5 a.m. drinking black coffee, watching tape. And then the other half is whoa. High school players are signing NIL deals. Remember, Quinn Ewers left the state of Texas to sign at Ohio State because he couldn't do NIL deals at 17. So he graduated early. So I think the other half of the league is well, no, people are building their brands. That's just part of it. And I think that's a fun debate right now with where we sit with Shedeur. And I think there'd be the same debate about Larry and maybe his speed compared to the explosive ability of T-Mac. That's just the way the draft goes. And I think that's why it's such a crapshoot. At the end of the day, most of these top 15 picks aren't going to pan out in terms of Hall of Fame players. Tyron Smith, perfect example. He wasn't the number one pick. He's the number one player in that class. Hard to not argue that. Left tackle who played over a decade in the league and a dramatic amount of Pro Bowl appearances. So it'll be fun to see what happens. I'm just trying to celebrate the week and what these players can do. And yeah, it'd be fun, man. Larry, number one.
No, it's exciting. I love cramming in the mock drafts. And I know when the draft comes and goes, as much as I'm excited to finally see where these guys land, it's that decompression of, oh man, it passed. And you talk about that class: Eli Manning, Larry Fitzgerald, Phillip Rivers, the late, great Sean Taylor, Roy Williams, D. Hall, Ben Roethlisberger, Jonathan Vilma. Those were all in the top 12. 2004 draft, ridiculous. Looking back at it.
Ridiculous. I think that goes back to it's not to take anything away from this year's draft, but it is the reality.
Yeah.
And I think that what won't get talked about at all, maybe DJ will bring it up on NFL Network, but the draft is different the last two drafts for sure because of the COVID season and what it did to college football and what NIL did to college football. I mean, look at 15 players from Ohio State chose to return. This is why Ohio State hasn't been what they were last year, in my opinion, because all those guys were 3 and out. They were such veterans playing because they could get paid to stay. So I think it's impacting the draft in nuanced ways, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's an incredible backup quarterback draft. Right? You look at Quinn Ewers, Tyler Shuck, Dylan Gabriel. There's 5-7 guys: Max Brosmer, Will Howard, Syracuse, Kyle McCord. There's a bunch of guys that I saw back in the day at Elite 11 that I think played 30 to 50 games. Dylan Gabriel started 63 games in college, and I think that's a huge benefit. I really do. And then you look at conference realignment, and now you could watch Big Ten versus Big Ten. SEC is so much bigger. I think it's going to be a good thing for these players. So many things I think have impacted where we sit now in this year's draft in a positive way. That I think these later draft picks, I bet if you study this 10 years from now, the guys picked in the second and third day last a little bit longer than traditional guys picked on the second and third day, because those are the guys that left early, and everybody's like, whoa, why are you leaving? Those guys aren't leaving early anymore. They're coming back, and they're making more money than they would make if they did leave early.
And it's also these guys coming in, getting that money, they're used to having that. They're more mature financially, which helps out a ton. It's great what NIL is doing for college sports, and it's reaping the benefits as well, the rewards we'll see in the pro level. He's Yogi Roth. You can catch him hosting the Y Option podcast, Big Ten Network. Also catch his work with Elite 11. You catch him everywhere. Good Morning Football as well. Yogi, I've got to be locked in for your next appearance. Appreciate you coming on the show, my man.
You got it, man. You got to come on mine now. We got to do the home and home, okay?
Deal. I'm down. I am so down. Shout out my guy Yogi. Thanks again for stopping by the show. Hey, make sure this Thursday we have a special Foxborough Rush on the clock. Will be live during the first round of the NFL Draft on Nesson Nation, Nesson, and Nesson's YouTube page. Check it out there for full coverage on what the Patriots do. Now to Athan and Matt with Ringside Review after WrestleMania.
Welcome in to another edition of Ringside Review, a post-WrestleMania edition. Athan Hristodulu alongside Matt Colpitts. We're going to dive in. We're going to react to what was an eventful weekend this past weekend in WWE. Of course, a 2-night spectacle. WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas is in the books. Matt, if I could ask you off the top, if you were to describe WrestleMania in a very short and sweet way, how would you describe it?
One word. A very short answer with very little time. Controversial. I just feel like this WrestleMania had highs, but especially had some lows that, we're going to dive right into. It was jam-packed. I had some feel-good moments, but also some moments where I was just literally asking why. So, controversial.
Yeah, I feel like if I was to give you a one word, why might be a good one as well. There was a lot of things that came out of this weekend, like you said, that I did enjoy. Don't get me wrong. Don't want to sound like we're coming off too negative right out of the gate here, but the way the opening match of night 1 finished, the way the ending of night 2 finished, but also the highs I got sandwiched in between. The start of night 2 was awesome. The ending of night 1 was awesome. We're going to dive in. We're going to highlight some of the things that we were taking away here. We'll start with night number 1 first, and then we'll go into night number 2, though. But there's no way we can't ignore what happened with the opening match of night number 1, and I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about this one, Matt. Basically, I have a bit of a theory, and I'll let you react first before I share the theory as to why things turned the way they did. But Jey Uso of all ways defeating Gunther, and I don't really know how I had it imagined in my head. I don't really know if I ever really drew up the finish in my head here, but to see Jey Uso win that match with a submission on Gunther, who they were talking about it in the pre-show, and I believe during Gunther's entrance as well, or maybe I was just talking about it and remember it that way, but 51-3 in singles competition in WWE, losing via submission. What was going through your mind? Because disbelief, it was basically all I had.
Yes, I mean, this is easily where controversy begins at this WrestleMania. You start pretty weak. I wanted Jey Uso to win. I do think it's the right call with the victory, but it was kind of just expected. We did not expect a spectacle between these two, and that's why even though Jey won the Royal Rumble, they did not main event. I'm worried. I feel like Jey's reign could have the fans turning on him, and once they turn on him, what's left, besides a one-word meme that kind of is just going to fizzle out. With the submission, man, I like it. I like that they're just being bold. They want Jey to, come off strong winning this title. But that's tough, man. You said it. Gunther has been built up as a monster. And I saw some other video that one match with Ilya Dragunov, he tapped out super quick. So some people are trying to defend it like that's Gunther's character. Like he's just not capable of surviving like submission holds or something. But I don't know. I just think it comes back to controversy. I don't think I'm really feeling it. I didn't finish that match feeling good about it. I'm excited for Jey to have the title run, but just fell flat for this match.
Yeah, that's you know what, like you took the words out of my mouth. The fear of this turning into just like a quick title reign where maybe they realized the mistake, but they had to at this point pull the trigger because a Rumble loser for both matches that had a Royal Rumble person coming out of them, I feel like you needed one of them to at least win, I guess you could say. And so for this match to end the way it did, I feel like I'm okay with the submission if Gunther struggles. And to your point of people pulling up the Dragunov match and he tapped quickly in that, and maybe the character is that like when Gunther gets put in a bad way, maybe he doesn't survive a submission like that. But I feel like I have seen him hold on in submissions before. I mean, I'm fine with the result. The ending just needed some more theatrics. And this is where I'll leave you with my theory on this one. And I'm curious if you maybe have a thought on it. There is a piece of me that the person, not the character Gunther, but the person portraying Gunther, maybe wasn't too thrilled at the idea of tapping out to Jey Uso. And maybe I'm way off on that and I'm completely incorrect on it, but it just does not suit Gunther in my eyes for the way I look at Gunther. And maybe there's a chance he wasn't thrilled about finding out about this submission, and that was kind of his way of getting back at WWE for it. Like, you're going to make Jey Uso tap me out at the biggest stage, at the biggest moment of his career to this point, going into WrestleMania as a world champion. Like, maybe there's a little bit of that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but like there's got to be something between the lines that we may never find out that gave us the result that we did, because the submission is not really what bothers me. It's just how fast the submission came at the end of the day. Like, I like what you said about it being a bold decision. I like bold, but I like bold to make sense. And for me, Gunther's struggling and fighting to his last breath before he's either tapping out, or even in a more fun way, maybe Jey Uso really locks it in and he passes out and loses that way, so he never has to submit, Like, that maybe would have been a better angle that I would have been happier with. But like, I'm fine with the result. I wanted Jey to win. It makes sense. But there is some danger with maybe this turning into a reign where the crowd turns on him because they're just unhappy with how he got the title to begin with. The other thing we'll discuss, of course, what wrapped up night number one, which honestly, in hindsight, I kind of wish was the main event for night number two now. And for me to be saying that, having gone into the initial kind of inception of this match being something I did not even want to see, to it turning into what we got, Seth Rollins going full-blown heel. His entrance even kind of foreshadowed what was going to happen. The devil dressed in white, coming out in all black with the flamethrower, and then obviously lights go out, bang, he's in all white, and he's the good guy. He even foreshadowed what was going to happen. I thought that was masterful storytelling. Paul Heyman turning on both his guys, and now he is a full-blown heel to this point. This is what you wanted. Are you happy with it? Did you get the finish you wanted to get to where we are right now, Matt?
I really did, man. I mean, if you go back and watch these ringside review segments, this is what I wanted. It's what I theorized.
Been hammering it.
It happened. With that being said, I feel like this is just one of those where, like, you don't have to do too much. Just let it play out. It was too storybook for Paul Heyman to just do what he did. He doesn't really need to be with CM Punk nowadays. We already got that nostalgia with just the entrance coming out to WrestleMania. With Roman Reigns, there's no more story to be told other than the story of how Roman Reigns kind of navigates being alone after however many years of being the top dog with the whole bloodline family. Now he's on his own. The story now is someone that needs a story, and that is Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, again, I've said it, he kind of grew stale. So I love that this is kind of the outcome. I always kind of, going into this, we were like, why is it a triple threat? There's no title on the line. It's going to be a main event. Something big is going to happen. This was just knocking at the door. This seemed like the right outcome. It felt right, and I personally do think that this was my match of the entire WrestleMania. It was super fun, so many close calls. I was pulled into it the whole time, and the second you see Paul Heyman go to his knees and hit the low blow on Roman Reigns, which that alone got a little bit of memes. He really held it there. I don't know about that, but I was popping off. I was happy. Rollins wins. He needs it, and now I'm excited to see how Seth and Paul as a heel tandem navigates WWE.
Oh man, you took the words out of my mouth. I've got to say, I was pulling for Punk as a Punk fan. I let the fandom get in front of me a little bit. I thought maybe WWE was pointing to the obvious a little too much, but this is the story that makes the most sense coming out of this. That gives you the freshest content. The Roman by himself. Obviously, CM Punk, and what's funny is you kind of walk out of this going, all right, CM Punk doesn't have Paul Heyman now. He was feuding with Rollins, and they made that mini feud with Roman. Like you don't even know what CM Punk goes to next now. Is it just an eventual feud with Cena? And then, of course, you now have Rollins, who has desperately needed, emphasis on that, desperately needed a refresh, and having Paul Heyman by his side now, hopefully we see a blend of Architect Rollins into whatever the heel persona is going forward here. Rollins obviously being able to have Paul Heyman now pull some strings for him in the back that we know Heyman is able to pull. I'm really looking forward to this, and again, best outcome by far for the entire weekend of matches. This one leads to so many branching storylines, and it's three main figureheads of WWE being sent off on a really good, basically unwalked path to this point in their careers. Flipping into night number 2, though, before we get into the fatal four-way conversation, because we've got to talk Dom Mysterio getting to turn face at WrestleMania, I wanted to touch on the opening match really quickly with you. That women's triple threat, one that I feel like myself, and maybe even you at certain points, and I know other people I've had on the show have been really concerned about, was the direction that this was all going. Io Sky getting her moment. And against Rhea Ripley and, of course, Bianca Belair, and they put on arguably the best wrestling match of the entire weekend. From start to finish, the pacing, the storytelling, you're hard-pressed to go back and find something in that match that did not jump off the screen, I should say, and just pure entertainment. How are we feeling, Io Sky? She's the champ. I know you're a big fan of hers, but that was phenomenal from literally bell to bell.
I agree, and this was probably my number 2 candidate for match of WrestleMania. I think the 2 triple threats of this Mania just were stellar. And with this, I was an Io fan. I was pulling for it. I know when we did our little predictions, I said that I wanted Io to win. It just made the most sense. And kind of the same point I just had with the last triple threat. Don't overcomplicate it. It just seemed like this was always Rhea versus Bianca. Io's getting kind of pushed as the afterthought. The easy story and the most logical story was that Io kind of takes advantage of that. While they're distracted and so caught up and trying to be the alpha woman, Io runs away with the title. And I loved it. I loved the execution. The match was super fun and just energetic. And I think this and, Rollins' triple threat, as we just discussed, were easily the 2 strongest matches of both nights.
Oh, I know. I mean, Listen, there were points where I was genuinely concerned that maybe WWE would fumble the opportunity to really solidify. And like Io doesn't necessarily need that solidification, but I feel like this is the solidification from the fans' eyes of like they're backing Io now, and I think we all needed that. And to see them put her in the position she was of like there is a chance if she loses this, she is an afterthought, and that's what WWE thinks of her. For them to just full blown shove her through the roof and have her win that match, and in an absolute spectacle. Again, like you said, arguably best match of the night. I would say in terms of like story, you give night 1 main event that, But when you just talk wrestling, I will take that triple threat and stack it up against anything we saw from this past weekend. It was unbelievable, bell to bell. Those women deserve all the love and then some. One of my favorite highlights of the night, and I'm glad when we talked about this earlier that you agreed with me here, Dom Mysterio winning the Fatal 4-Way for the Intercontinental Championship in a way that, when you think of Dom Mysterio to this point in his career, is the only way he could have possibly won a championship like this. And it was on the grandest stage and basically turned face. The crowd was probably one of the loudest pops that we got the entire weekend was for Dom Mysterio, the guy who has generated nuclear heat for what feels like years of his career now, is, I guess, a face now if they're going to play into it. I don't know. But I mean, just your reactions to that. It was awesome. Him running back to the ring to celebrate. It was perfect.
Yes, man. I mean, hey, first off, not to toot my own horn, but this was another one where it was just right there. This was meant for a Dom Mysterio victory, and I'm so glad that they capitalized on it. And the fact that he got it by pinning Finn Balor, cinema. Now, with that being said, yeah, you nailed the nail in the coffin, however they say it. You have Dom, win, and then he goes and creates his own WrestleMania moment. That definitely was not in the script or the plans for him to run back down. They were already starting to promote the next segment, and Dom just comes in and just takes the white hot crowd in the palm of his hand. He technically didn't even have a face turn. He still kind of stole a victory in this match. And I did watch a little bit of the post show, and Dom was out there still talking like a heel. He was saying he's already the best Intercontinental Champion of all time. He's already better than his father, Rey Mysterio. Typical heel talk, as you would expect from him. But this is one of those situations where, I don't know, you have won the crowd. You got it in WWE.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of those things where most recently, I guess you could kind of compare it to like John Cena turning heel and then still getting cheers. You're like, we're not going to boo you, like you're still the GOAT. We're still going to love you, whatnot. So I remember the first night he had a promo, he was still getting endless cheers. That's kind of what this feels like. It doesn't matter what Dom says. He could literally look into the eyes of someone in the crowd, completely roast them or take away their dignity, and they're still going to cheer for him. That's just how you are over. You are absolutely kind of getting the rocket strapped on you and sent off for WWE success. And I'm here for it, man. We've seen this man grow up literally, and now it's cool to see that he's really coming to his own, and it's just absolutely white hot.
Yeah, man. Dom Mysterio is one of those stories that, like, you look back on his career to this point. When he first got thrusted into WWE, the heat that he basically got just for not belonging there, basically, and it being like this is nepotism here. This is Rey Mysterio's son getting shoehorned into something he shouldn't be in. And the growth and development of him to becoming one of, like, the ultimate heels in WWE, to the point where he was so good at it, people finally built the respect for him and began to love him for it. And now he is so thick in the game, and he is so good at what he does. And the fact that this always happens when a heel is so good, you have to cheer what they're doing. It's the natural tipping point, and again, a natural WrestleMania moment, something you could not book. But in that moment, Dom read the room, and he was like, "These people are loving it. Let me give it to him one more time." And that crowd reaction when he ran back and got up on the ring and pulled the title in the air one more time, it was as beautiful. That's what wrestling is all about. That's a WrestleMania moment. But as far as moments go, they're not always perfect. And unfortunately, WrestleMania 41 ends in what some people would consider disaster. It was the result a lot of us wanted, but it was definitely not the road we wanted to get there. I think we should talk about the grand scheme. I feel like I've seen a lot of people discussing just not being happy about it, but let's kind of look at the bigger picture of this. What went wrong here? Was this The Rock trying to set something up that maybe is further down the road? Is this poor planning, them maybe thinking he could be there or not being sure he could be there, and ultimately you have Travis Scott at Elimination Chamber to give you a way out at Mania? Is this John Cena already ruining wrestling before he even officially started to ruin wrestling, as he's claiming he's going to do beginning on Monday Night Raw? Like, how did we get to this point where we had Travis Scott being the main antagonist to turn the tide at WrestleMania?
Oh, man. I don't know. I just don't know. And when I say controversy earlier, this is where it applies most. Even over a Jey Uso victory in controversial fashion, even over Logan Paul getting a victory at WrestleMania, even over whatever other moment you want to look at from this show, this is number one. This is the number one most controversial moment where it's like, yes, Cena got his 17th title, but at what cost? At the end of the day, it does feel like he's definitely ruined wrestling. But to me, I don't know. It feels like a little bit of an excuse. It feels like this gives an excuse for a lazy storyline, and something's off. Something's off. I don't know if it's like The Rock was supposed to be way more heavily integrated and he just isn't. Too busy. That ruined it all. I don't know. But even though these are my two favorites, I was not a fan. Congrats to Cena being the GOAT, but definitely could have been better.
I know. I'm sorry that this match went as poorly as it did for you, because I feel like the amount of hype that you've built up around Cody and Cena and them being like the two guys that you love watching, for that to go the way it was devastating. And there's a piece of me that feels like there's a chance that this was maybe by design, and it was something that I thought of as soon as I watched everything kind of unfold at the end there, that like WWE has to be a step ahead of everyone else here. And I keep going back to like Cena saying he's going to ruin professional wrestling, and maybe it started with stealing the WrestleMania main event from us all, not giving us what we want to see, which you look at last year or even the year before, which was like the Avengers failing the first time at 39 and then succeeding the second time with the Roman Reigns Cody Rhodes saga. Like, this was him just ripping the main event right away from everybody, all the diehard fans, and saying, no, this is about me securing my championship, and I'm not going to give you something electric. I'm going to give you a dark and gloomy finish, almost like his entrance to the ring with literally just his name on the screens for his graphics. So we'll have to see where it goes. It's why we're wrestling fans, because we're always going to tune in that next night to see what the heck is going on, whether we agree or disagree. But Matt, thank you once again for joining me on a special edition of Ringside Review. We'll catch you tomorrow, actually, to review Monday Night Raw.
Special thanks to Yogi Roth. Special thanks to Athan and Matt breaking down WrestleMania. There will be another Ringside Review in tomorrow's episode. I'm George Balekji. This is Boston has entered the chat. Make sure to like, subscribe, download, rate, review. Go to Nesson's YouTube page. Leave a thumbs up and a comment as well, wherever you get your podcasts. This was The Chat. We'll see you guys same time, same place tomorrow.